What's going on, guys? You're watching Twitch, the Shield Bearer of Faith. Thank you for being here. So my normal video location, the gym, got occupied right at the end of my time in there, so I couldn't do my video there. So you guys are joining me in my car. You know, I didn't intend for my predominant video type to be baptism testimonials. However, apparently the Father had different plans than what I did, and that is apparently the predominant video type. So if this is boring you half to death, I'm terribly sorry, but I feel led to share them, and they're happening with increased frequency. And I do always feel there is a central message with each one, and today is no different. So, as always, no glory to me, only to the Father. I am purely a mouthpiece on this, sharing what I see and what I participate in. So I just finished teaching a series of classes in Tell City, Indiana, which you guys have already heard about. I had the privilege of baptizing a man and his wife. And I told you guys about that one, that it was powerful to be part of that portion, you know, where the Spirit jumps from one person to another and witness the leadership that comes from a husband to a wife when it's performed properly. And that's pretty cool. And there's a vulnerability there that comes with this piece of obedience, where it exemplifies like true strength, where you step out into this unknown. And guys, none of us can reach out and touch God. None of us can, right? So that's the thing about faith. You're running off of something you can't touch. Now, I find in my life that I often can feel the Lord. I just can't touch him, right? So we, as people, run heavily off what we can tangibly feel and reach out and touch. And in my classes, I even tell people, part of what I teach is in Responder 3, I make people function for a period of time without being able to see. And people usually leave the class saying to themselves and me, how cool that is that they can put tourniquets on and wound pack and stuff without vision. Because people rely heavily on what they can see. We all do. It's actually a weakness in a lot of ways. We don't rely as much off what we know and what we can feel. And I found this when I was a cop. Many times testimonies from people would be distorted from fact because they were running off what they thought they saw, not what they actually saw. And testimonies are easy to shift. So we baptized 2 people in Tell City, Indiana. And that was the first time in any class that I remember where I prayed at the end of class. And I already told y'all that I've since felt led to pray at the beginning and at the end of every class. And so then we go to Philly. And Philly ends up being the most spiritually driven class yet, by far. To the point where at the end of Responder 2, on the second day I was teaching, so I taught 3 Responder 1s, 2 of which were back-to-back on the first day. And then the second day I taught Responder 1 and 2, then the third day I taught Responder 3. So during lunchtime on the second day, between Responder 1 and 2, I got to talking to a guy named Brian. And Brian has suffered from a gunshot wound in his life, where he had to put a tourniquet on. And so he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm life number 35, I think was what he said. And if you keep up with Refuge Medical and Training, people will send in testimonials about lives saved as a result of training or kits. And so he tells me, yeah, I got shot in the leg and I put a tourniquet on myself. And the exact parameters of how he got shot, he may not want known, but that doesn't matter. So that led me to ask, if that had been your day, your last day, where are you at with your relationship with Yahweh, with God? And he was confident. He said, oh yeah. And he gave me his personal testimony there. He's like, I talk to the Father all day, every day. And he sounded confident. I said, great, man. And then I told him, I said, you know, it's funny what the Father gets us all to do, what points he brings us to. I don't understand why I'm being allowed or why I'm being told to assist with baptism so often. And we talked about that for a minute. He's like, you know, it's got to be just such a humbling thing. I said, oh yeah, big time. And so I felt it in my mind, and I could see it on him, that baptism was going to be a thing of his. Well, then we go through Responder 2, which has a difficult scenario at the end. And then we get to the end of the briefing. And I prayed for the whole class. And then in the prayer, I said, Father, if there's anybody in this room, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. If there's anybody in this room feeling the pull to go and make a public declaration of their commitment to you, or if there's anybody in here that doesn't know you, I ask that you convict them and bring them out here. Don't let them think about anybody else, and let them say that I want to get in that water. Something like that. And that's my paraphrasing, but it was essentially a baptism call. Does anybody feel led to go dedicate their life publicly and be cleansed of everything they've ever done? Does anybody here feel heavy of whatever you think you're having to hold on to? Does anybody want to be someone new? Does anybody want to be reborn? And so I finished the prayer, and then knowing what I know from my experience to this point, I always say it out loud, and I always say it more than once. Does anybody want to be baptized? I look around the room of these guys, and there's one woman in the class too. I said, does anybody want to be baptized? And Brian speaks up and he says, is there any rule on how many times you can be baptized? I said, there is not. He said, then I'd like to be. And upon some further inquiry, he tells me that he was baptized as a child. Doesn't really remember it. Definitely didn't choose it. So he wants to publicly declare his life. And so I made an announcement to the room. I said, excellent. I said, if anybody, class is dismissed, but if anybody would like to remain and be a witness to this, I'll be back in a minute. We're going to go get changed. And you guys are welcome to leave or stay. So I came back and more than half of the class remained. Praise the Father. And so we go out and we baptize Brian. And you know, guys, it's infectious. There was a man in this class that I recently had told you guys a story about because of a baptism testimony, named Eric. And Eric flew all the way out from Maryland to Oklahoma to be baptized some time ago, just here recently though, not but a couple months ago. And so he came to this class. He took the entire Essential Responder, all 3 classes. And so he was a witness to this. He also shared his testimony. I prompted him on the second day during lunch. I said, Eric, tell him about what happened to you. And he told pretty much the entire Responder 3 class his testimony about why he got baptized, what he was feeling, what led him to that moment. And so I made mention in the room. I said, guys, if anybody's feeling led in reference to baptism when we get to the end of the day, I know everybody will be tired. I know you have things to do. But if you're interested, we can go get wet. And so this very fit man, this very buff guy named Frank, and he was really good in class. Frank comes over to me and he goes, so what kind of clothes should I wear? And I'm thinking he's talking about for class. I said, brother, just what you've been wearing all day. I mean, we've been getting dirty, right? He said, no, I mean for the water. I said, oh, whatever you want to wear, because the Father doesn't care about the clothes. He said, all right. And so Frank decided he wanted to commit his life publicly. And then we had another man named Chris. And he wanted to commit his life too. And he got in touch with his wife, and she brought their kids, and they got to witness the baptism of him. So we went outside, and there was a shift, though. I did something I haven't done yet. So typically Phelps will assist with the baptisms. And you know, guys, if I'm not careful, people or me will believe that this whole thing is about me, or that I am important somehow when I'm not. And so for the first time ever, when we were going to baptize Chris, I actually called Brian. The first baptism in Philly. I said, Brian, would you come in this water and assist Phelps with baptizing Chris? He said, yeah. Now, a little bit earlier in the day, Brian had actually asked, hey, man, can I help with the baptisms? He didn't specify how, right? But it occurred to me that we are supposed to go forth and make disciples. Which means that not only do I want them to witness what it means to be a servant, and I really hope I'm doing that right, but I need to make sure I am teaching these men that I am privileged enough to disciple. I need to make sure that I'm showing them the way to lead, because I'm not going to be with them most of the time. And so I asked Brian to take my place. And he and Phelps baptized Chris. I stayed in the water. I was there just as support. But it's not about me, man. I don't matter. And it was so cool. It was so humbling. I was so proud. You know, I really was. I was so proud of Brian and Phelps. And just all the brothers there. And JT was there. JT usually has the role of blowing the shofar. He'll bring one for this purpose. It's cool, man. We've all got our piece here, right? And Eric was there again, and several other brothers. And so I made that call again. I said, is there anybody else? And I felt like there might be. But it doesn't really matter what I think. Oh, and I said earlier in the day, during that lunch break, when we were talking about it, I prompted Eric to give his testimony. I even said, I was like, guys, I can feel it. It's before Frank said anything. I said, I can feel it. Somebody else is feeling the call. I can feel it in this room. Somebody else is feeling like giving their all, taking that leap of faith, taking that test of true strength where you're vulnerable and where you reach out, step off a ledge you can't see. Can't reach out and touch the Lord, but you sure can feel him. And so my parents come and meet us in Philly. And they were visiting with the grandbabies and with me and my wife. And in that time frame, I had a man named Matt, who was also in the class. I had another guy named Noah. And Noah was a first. Noah stopped and prayed in the middle of a scenario. That's cool, man. That's a first. I think I already mentioned some of that to y'all. But so Noah told me, and we communicated back and forth, me and him and me and Matt, we communicated back and forth over the course of about a day. And they were interested in baptism. And they also told me they had been communicating with Eric. So Eric had been answering questions that they had had of what brought him to this point, where he's at, why. And again, I was very proud of somebody that is following what the Lord is telling them to do. That I've gotten to play just this tiny role in. And so Matt's going to have to drive a couple hours back. He had already left to come to be baptized. And Noah wanted to bring his wife as a witness. I was like, cool. So we arranged we're going to meet at the pool, and my parents ended up coming out there as well, and we're all going to be witness to it. But here's the interesting thing. You know, guys, it takes effort to do this stuff. It takes, in some cases, money that someone else did not provide. The father does. but it takes time if nothing else. Eric voluntarily offered to come with Matt. A couple-hour drive each way, and they drove back the same day. They had just left here, guys, the day before or 2 days before. And he made that additional effort and brought Matt back. And then, yet again, I had the benefit, the privilege of having another one of these men that I had discipled get in the water with me and baptize 3. Well, I take it back. He baptized 2 with me. So Eric gets in the water. He helps me baptize Noah and Matt. And then I make that last call and I say, is there anybody else? Is there anybody else? And nobody else says anything. But I hop out of the water and I get to talking to Noah and his wife. And I mentioned the power that it was in Tell City when I got to be part of a man baptizing his wife. I got to play some small role in that, and how cool it was for me when I was a newer believer, when I got to baptize my wife. And then lo and behold, if Noah's wife doesn't speak up and say she wants to be baptized. How cool is that, guys? You know what's humbling even further is that she said that they've had baptisms going on at their church that just don't feel right. And lo and behold, for some reason, what did feel right to her was a pool at a random hotel with somebody she didn't know. It's very humbling. And so then I got to participate with Noah baptizing his wife. And so 3 more people. So since we left to come on this training trip, I swear people think that we're coming to train people ways to delay death and not die. No, apparently the Father's seeing fit that we're training people how to never die. You thought it was just medical training. So since we left, it's a whole bunch of people, guys. 2 in Indiana, then 3, then 3 more. Praise the Father. From death to life, man. Now, to bring this around, these are all leaps of faith, no doubt. These are all commitments, no doubt. But guys, I think that Yeshua, Jesus, was serious when he said that you're going to have to pick up your cross and follow him to gain life. Now, I was just talking with Eric earlier today that I think I had never read it like I did today. It's in Matthew. When Yeshua says, I'm going to paraphrase, to pick up your cross and follow him. Just before that, he says that whoever seeks to save his life will lose it. And whoever essentially gives his life will gain it. I don't think that's just dealing with life and death like we normally think. Because I feel more alive than I ever have. I feel life more abundantly than I ever have. So to me, it comes across that might be just like what we're teaching people. It's dual meaning. Yes, we're teaching trauma aid, how to delay death, but we're also teaching people how to never die. And we're spreading the gospel through living testimony. So to me, maybe that's what Yeshua was doing. Maybe he was telling people, you want to feel alive, you want to live a life worth living, pick up your cross and follow. And guys, that comes with cost. It cost me a more stable job, if I'm being honest, guys. I never missed a paycheck in COVID because I worked for the government as a cop. I had a very consistent life. I knew my schedule. I wasn't the new guy. I was good at being a police officer. I spent a decade either doing that job or getting ready for that job. doing security jobs or whatever, a decade of my life. So it cost me something when I felt the Spirit pulling me to do this. And eventually, the Spirit will pull me to do something else. And as long as I'm following, He's going to be there with me. And He's going to continue to use me however He sees fit, as long as I am open to it. And I'm confident I will live life more abundantly. But it does come with a cost, and it's worth it. But you have to step out into that unknown, where there's more uncertainty, because that is where you're going to find the Lord. Where you take that plunge and you say, you know what, to heck if it feels embarrassing, to heck if I feel vulnerable doing it. I don't care who's watching or who's listening, it doesn't matter. But I gave my whole life, not just Saturday, not just Sunday, my whole life. Where are you at with your relationship with God? Where are you at with your life of service? Because that's what we're told to do. Now that might look different for some people. But how alive do you feel? Pray on it. If you're someone who doesn't feel the life, if you don't feel that, you might have to shuffle the deck pretty hard. Meaning you might have to get up and change everything you know. Because that's what it took for me. And I genuinely wish that for you. Go out there, guys. Make disciples. If you're not supposed to be the one in the water, then don't be. If you're supposed to be the one in the water, then do it. Speak freely about your faith. Don't be afraid. And then don't be caught up in whatever the world is telling you. It's just holding you down. Let it go. You got stuff to do for the kingdom. Hope it helps. We'll see you later.